Hey, it's Rich, the Louisiana Hobby Guy, and you found me today on the Laser Maker's Realm. Today, I'm going to talk about an epiphany that I had. I was watching one of Patrick's videos from last week or 2 weeks ago right here on the Laser Maker's Realm, and it was about rubber stamps. And my phone rang, and I reached down to grab my phone, and right straight down here is my microphone right next to my phone stand. And I hit the microphone stand while I was going to get the phone, and I saw something on there that just gave me this great idea that I'm going to share with you today. And I'm also going to share with you some downloads for a download for some templates, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. So let's get started. All right, so while I'm watching the video, it inspired me to make some rubber stamps. I haven't done them in a really long time, probably 2 years. I only did them once, but I made like 50 rubber stamps, and it was for my grandchild, and it was a whole bunch of little figures, you know, that they could rubber stamp ink onto paper and stuff like that. It was, you know, like cartoon characters. And it was a whole set of 50, and I made the box and everything. And that's the only time I've ever done it. So watching the video last week inspired me to do it again. And I know it can be done on a diode laser, even though Patrick did it on the fiber and most people do it on the CO2. Guess what? It comes out just as good on the diode laser, which you know, really shocked me. The first time I did do it on the CO2. So we're going to jump over into the shop today, and I'm going to show you the videos of cutting it out. And then I'm going to talk about the epiphany that I had while I was answering the phone. And I'll show you a picture of my microphone, and you'll completely understand why I came up with a whole new way to make a rubber stamp. And I'm putting that in air quotes for a reason that you'll find out a little later on in the video. But it's going to make life so simple, and it's going to make this so easy to do. This one little trick that I discovered, you're going to say, wow, that's a great idea. Or at least I hope you will anyway. So let's jump over into the shop and get started. This is the rubber version here. And I used a gray rubber. And I'm speeding this video up here. I did some testing on it to find out what the proper setting would be for the right depth and the cutting. This is my very first attempt at an actual stamp, and just a quick video of the process here. This is the final results of my first attempt. Actually, it's the second attempt. The first one I did where I had done some cut tests, so that one was, I didn't put it in the right position, but this one was in the right position. This was my first real attempt at it, of the rubber, and my goal here was to get as much of the top layer of the rubber off as possible. And this particular brand of rubber, laser safe rubber, has like two layers, a bottom layer and the top layer, and the top layer is the one you want to engrave out. And it did a really fine job. I was kind of shocked at how well this came out. And now I'm just finishing up, getting ready to put the little stamp part on the backside, glue it on. Now, I bought some of these cabinet knobs off of Amazon. They were cheap enough, just a couple of dollars for a whole package of them. And all I'm doing here is just putting a little bit of CA glue on here. I put way too much. And I'm just going to drop that rubber stamp right on top of there and make sure that it is in the right position or thereabouts. You want to make sure that you're able to get pressure from the whole stamp. And that one thing that I don't particularly like about rubber stamps is that you know, you got to kind of rock them back and forth to get them to print properly. But this was a pretty easy setup, and all I did was use a little CA glue and put it on top there. Alright, now I'm getting ready to use it for the first time. And the first thing that I wanted to do was put a couple marks on it so that I can tell which side is the top, and also when it's, you know, square on the page. So I went ahead and put these little lines on here, and I did learn a lesson using these knobs that you'll see in a minute. So I just wrote top over here. Couldn't get my pen to write on here, but that's beside the point. I could have just made a mark like with a little arrow or something. But here I am getting started with the first actual stamp. And this is where I learned the lesson. And I couldn't quite figure out why the bottom part of the stamp wasn't stamping properly. Everything else stamped pretty decent except for that bottom part of the stamp. I tried rocking it around. You see that just distorted it because the rubber actually moves. And I stamped it and then found out that these rubber pull knobs are not perfectly flat. So I did wind up making another one and sanding the knob down. Alright, so now that we're finished with the rubber stamp, let's talk about the rubber stamp. Let me show you the discovery I made by accident. And I don't know, maybe lots of people know how to do this already, but here it is right there on the screen. You're going to see my discovery. That's a photograph of my microphone. And you'll see on the microphone, I've got my business card coin mounted to it. And I looked at it and I said, oh my goodness, that looks exactly like a rubber stamp. And I said to myself, yeah, I've got to do that. I'm going to make a rubber stamp, you know, out of wood. So that's the big discovery. So let's jump back over to the Laser Lab again and let me show you how I did this on wood. We'll do a quick wood video. I'll show you a comparison, the rubber stamp to the wood stamp, and then you can make up your own mind if you want to give this a try or not. So let's jump back to the Laser Lab again. I've changed it from the Laser Shop to Laser Lab. I have to remember that. But here we go. Let's go next door. Now, moving on to the wood, I just dropped a scrap piece of plywood that I had from another job onto the Lasermatic 10, and I set the layer speeds, in case you're interested, at 3000 speed, 75 power, that's millimeters per minute, and ran the job. I did wind up running a second pass on it because it didn't go deep enough, and I forgot to check off the crosshatch like I do my coins. So it did not wind up coming out right on the first pass. I ran a second pass and it came out just perfect. Going back to the rubber real quick. The rubber was slightly different because it would not cut any more than 2 millimeters deep. So I had to, the line that I used to cut it out wouldn't cut. So I wound up offsetting that line by a 0.5 millimeter and putting it into offset fill, and it cut right through. So don't ask me why. I really don't know, but it just would not cut any deeper than 2 millimeters. So that's what I did to fix that. But anyhow, so now I'll go back into live time and show you the actual results from the 2 passes, which should have been 1, and the wood. This is 3 millimeter wood, and came out really, really good. I put a very light sanding on it, really light, 320 grit, and this is an image of after the 320 grit, and then I wound up doing a 400 on it as well, just to get rid of any edges or whatnot. So there is the wood stamp. I'm not going to call it rubber stamp. So now I'm in the middle of my second attempt at this. I took that door pull and I sanded it down some. I didn't quite get it perfectly flat because I was sanding it by hand. I should have used a machine, but I didn't want to break the machine out. And now I'm figuring out that I can get a pretty decent stamp from this if I apply pressure to all 4 sides, which I didn't really do here. I got maybe 3 sides. But, you know, if you put pressure on it and then just kind of rock it back and forth, up and down, you get a halfway decent stamp out of this. So it turned out better than I thought it would. And again, this is the first try, lessons learned. So, you know, that's really not bad for the first try at this. At least I think so. All right, folks, so that's about it. So here you've got your rubber stamp, okay? And I've got my wood stamp. Just an amazing discovery by mistake. And here I've got my other wood stamp, which of course you don't want it to, you know, you want the wood to cover the entire surface on here. This was I just needed something to attach it so I could stamp it. And I wound up having to put pressure on both sides to get it to stamp decently, because it was putting too much pressure on the middle and not enough on the edges. So you don't want to do that. But I think that the wood stamp stamps just as good as the rubber stamp does, if not better, because when you press down on it, the rubber can't move. And on the rubber stamp it can, but on the wood stamp it can't. So these letters can't distort. And I think this is a better way to go if you're going to be doing rubber stamps. And then I discovered something afterwards, is you stamp it a few times in the inker, or ink it I should say, a couple of times in the inker, and let that dry. And this way you don't get all, and of course put a quick sanding on it once it's done. Very light sanding with like a 320 grit sandpaper. Then ink it a couple of times and let it dry. And then you've got a nice surface that will stamp just as good or better than the rubber stamp. If you put too much pressure on a rubber stamp, it distorts. If you put too much pressure on this, nothing happens. So just make sure you make your handle the same size as the wood if you're going to do a rectangle like this, or a square, or whatever. These little things are just pull knobs for kitchen cabinets that I got a bunch of them pretty cheap off of Amazon. And, you know, they sort of work for the job that you're doing here. But the difference on the between the CO2 and the diode as compared to the fiber is that you can't make super small rubber stamps like Patrick did in his video, because you got to have that surface area, and the size of your focal point is huge compared to the fiber laser. So the fiber laser, you'll be able to make really super small ones like Patrick did. But for a normal rubber stamp, hey, how can you go wrong with something like this? You can do these all day long out of scrap wood if you're so inclined. I'm not a rubber stamp person. You know, if something has to be approved, it's just as easy to write approved on the paper as it is to rubber stamp it. But some people love rubber stamps, and kids absolutely love them. So, you know, you can make like all kinds of cartoon characters and stuff like that. I will put a download link below the video where you can get some sample files to play with and test this out and see if you like it. You know, I've put together a whole bunch of the most common rubber stamps that are out there on the market, and I've done the graphics on them, and I've reversed them and everything else, and put that link down below the video. So click on Show More below the video, and when you do that, you'll see a link to the direct download where you can get the template. And I've got the LightBurn art template, art library template. I've got the SVG, the AI, and the DXF files. So whatever laser that you're using, it doesn't matter. Whatever software you're using, there'll be a file down there for you. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video as much as I enjoyed making it. I did have a lot of fun making this video and creating these rubber stamps. I hope you do too. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.